Welcome to FikaAI. We are here at DevNexus. And my name is Yolande Poirier from Neo4j, working at Neo4j, and Frank Greco. Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. So, Frank, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, Frank Greco. I'm the founder of the New York Java SIG in New York City. It's the very first and largest Java user group in the United States.
And we were just chatting and saying, well, we've been thinking about AI for a long time, right?
Yes.
Even on the Java side. So, so what are you doing right now? So we won't go back too far out because that's a long story. So I'll try to make it short.
Sure.
And so what are you doing in the AI space?
So right now, I'm concerned about developers, Java developers, and other developers, and how they approach programming with AI, specifically more generative AI in their applications, because I'm getting the experience from developers and also from people who are not developers that they don't understand what generative AI is, and they may think it's a search engine or it's a magic fountain of information that just appeared on our doorstep, and they don't understand how it truly works and what are the downsides. So that's been my responsibility. I take it as my responsibility is to make sure people understand the basics and the foundations.
Okay. So what are the things that they should be? So if you think of a developer who is building applications, like how do you explain AI to them?
That's a good question. So if you're building an e-commerce system and you may have a library or framework for e-commerce, you have to know about e-commerce. If you're building a medical system and you have a library or package or framework for medicine, you have to know about medicine to use it. And the same thing goes for other industries. For investment banking, you may have to know about fixed income instruments. There's an API. You better know about it. So with generative AI, it's very similar. You have to know about how generative AI and how machine learning works in general in a similar fashion. It's not something that you plug into a stack and you forget about. That's the last thing you want to do, because there are significant risks to doing that.
So are you saying that they need to understand data itself, or?
I think they have to understand. Developers have to understand the fundamental aspects of what machine learning is, what generative AI is, how a neural network works from a high level. I mean, most of us are not data scientists,
right?
And we will never ever be data scientists. And when I worked for a large search company, the idea was to push people to become data scientists, and I struggled to tell management that most of us are application developers by far and away, and we're users. We have to know about the stuff from a high level and how to use it carefully.
Okay. So how do you? So what's the first training? Like what do you have an example of what you?
Right. So the first thing is that when you understand is to learn about how neural networks work from a high level, and how they're collections of probabilities. They don't store information. At least the current generation of language models don't store the information. They store the patterns about the information. Now in the future, will they store the information? We all know technology evolves. Maybe language models 2.0 has that capability, but right now it doesn't. So it doesn't hold the information, it holds the patterns information. So that's a concept that developers have to understand. It is not a search engine, but it can be used with a search engine quite successfully. That you can get information using a search engine and look through these results using a language model to find a better response. And these are concepts developers have to be aware of. And also, when you generate a prompt, how do you structure the prompt when you send to a language model? What's important with a prompt is not so much the query, but it's the context around the query, because you're guiding the language model and how to respond. That's exactly what a prompt is. You're guiding how the flow is through the neural network. So the better your context, the better your response. So that's why context is critical. Whether you stuff it using copy-paste, you're copying a website and you paste it into the prompt, or you do it more intelligently, like with a RAG system, where you're looking for a database. It's like, give me the most closest things to my query, in a more intelligent fashion. But context is critically important.
Okay. And so what do you see what do you see like people I would say like making the biggest mistakes that people make, like even like, okay, so they understand the prompts, they understand a little bit of the context, but how do they deepen their understanding?
So one thing is that when you're dealing with a chatbot, we have to remember what a chatbot is. A chatbot is a web app. It's a web app that front ends a language model. We know about this stuff. We've been doing it for 20 years, plus 20 years plus. So it's something that this is not something brand new. It's talking to a service, right? So with a chatbot, it's like, how does it know? We know that they're using stateless APIs. So the language model doesn't remember what we did the previous time we called it. But wait a minute, chatbots understand the conversation. So it knows what I said in the prior paragraph. How does it know that? So I go about explaining that you have to actually resend the entire conversation to the language model. So you have to keep track of the history, keep in some sort of buffer yourself. Here are my prompts that I send. Here's the responses to the prompts, and this context is bigger and bigger and bigger. So you're sending it every time. So the advantage is that this reduces the chance for a hallucination, but it also increases data costs because you're sending more and more data.
Right.
Yeah.
Any workaround for that?
Well, so there's several ways of getting a better response from a prompt. Well, one way is you send a prompt to a language model. That's one way. The next way is that you send more context in the prompt. That's the third way. Another way is a RAG system. That's a more intelligent way of putting context in the prompt. Another way, which is a big jump, is something called fine-tuning, where you have to be a data scientist. Fine-tuning is not for the faint of heart. You have to know about data science. You have to know about statistics, and other things related to data science. But that's where you're actually changing the weights in the neural network. So that's a big step. But once you do that, you don't have to send the data back and forth because the model already is aware of this intelligence. But again, it's a trade-off. It's a bigger step to do that. And then you have people have to monitor the model, making sure it's giving you the right results over time, because you may have the model have what's called model drift, where it's not giving you what you want. So you have to actually correct the model, tweak it a little bit. So you have to have a team of people that know what they're doing with data science. So not every company has those facilities. And that's why RAG systems are good. Again, the trade-off is cost, data cost.
Right. So would you say so? Essentially, it's better to have data scientists on.
Well, I think if you're building a serious ML application, you should have a data scientist on board, at least a data scientist on board. It's very helpful. I have colleagues that are experts in data science, so whenever I come up with a hard question, I call them and say, like, I'm having a hard time understanding. Can you explain to me how this is working? So it's important that you have someone for that. But if you're building something like a chatbot, normally you don't. But when you're building a chatbot, what's really important is that you might get a manager who says to a bunch of developers, we want people to ask questions of our documentation. We want people to ask, query our documentation through a chatbot. And it should be pretty simple, right? So the thing is that when you have text, you have tech writers create text for your website, a static text. Now your manager is asking you to put in an application. They want you to deploy an application. So you're going from putting text on a website to deploying an application. Some managers don't understand the difference between just putting text on a website and now deploying an application that has versioning issues and auditing issues and optimization, performance issues, and then risk issues. So it's a big step to go from a simple text on a website to deploying an application. And I think if you understand, of course, experienced developers understand this, but sometimes when you get a manager that says, we'll just put a chatbot, no problem. It's a big step. And not just the technical issues, there are legal issues. There's compliance issues. There's regulatory issues. Not just in the US, but in Europe it's even more difficult. So you have to be really, really careful. And then there's some times where, should I use AI? Right? If there are no patterns in the data, there's absolutely no patterns. Why are you using AI? Use a SQL query. right? There's no reason to use AI. So these are all things that, intelligent developers, and of course all Java developers are intelligent, right?
Of course.
That we have to look at the problem and say, like, are there patterns here? Are there risks? And then make the intelligent decisions.
Okay. So you're teaching this on a regular basis?
Yes, I'm teaching it. So I have corporate customers, and also I'm teaching it through LinkedIn.
Yep.
So I have a course on LinkedIn. Matter of fact, I'm finishing my second course, and I'm already outlining a third course for LinkedIn. And the focus is on Java developers.
Nice.
Because now that we've gone through a phase where Python is really good for building models, it's a really good language for building models, right, and understanding data science. But now we're moving into a phase of production, right? Mm-hmm. It's early production for a lot of these things. So what language do we know that's really good at production systems? Java. Right? So this is good timing for Java developers, right? So that's what but I want people to understand the risks involved with this, because there are some risks, and I know some of my cybersecurity friends are saying that there's a lot of prompt injection problems that we haven't solved yet. Like we had many years ago with SQL, there was SQL injection that we solve with templates, but you can't solve that problem in a similar way with language models. So there are some issues yet to be resolved. So one of my concerns is that when we have agents, and we have millions of agents flying around the world doing things on their own, and they can be easily hacked fairly easily. I mean, I'm not a hacker, but I've changed some language models on some very popular e-commerce systems to do things they weren't intended. It's like, well, if I can do it, someone way smarter than me can do something even more sophisticated. So there are things that we have to focus on. So hopefully these things will be solved, because we know with autonomous driving, how many people would get into a car and with their children in a totally autonomous driving, and so you're going to go on a highway at 80 miles an hour. Would you feel comfortable?
No.
So,
or a plane. A plane is even better.
Well, okay.
Let's try the plane.
Plane. But if you're in a car, you think twice about that,
yes.
right? And there's a reason why there's the number one car that promotes this stuff has the largest fatality rate, right? Because people believe this works. It's
right.
It's not baked yet. It's not fully baked yet. Mm-hmm. And now with agents being fully autonomous, flying around the planet and interacting with one another, do we understand how this all is going to work in a system dynamics point of view? It's pretty risky, So I lived through the 2008 financial, and there
right.
It was a similar problem. Things were moving around without any boundaries. And we're doing the same thing. So mm-hmm. I'm worried about there could be a collapse. I'm not saying it will happen, but potentially there's a collapse. So we have to think about this stuff, mm-hmm. that it's on a larger scale than 2008.
Yes. Because basically the agents are like controlling themselves or each other. Yeah. And that's also a little bit scary.
And we don't know how they behave. So has anyone done experiments on how this, in a scaled way, how this, could something go wrong? Could it affect other things? This happened in investment banking and trading, where this program trading has gone wild, and it has affected a lot of things, where the stock market dropped in one day. It dropped precipitously. Why? Because all the programmers were interacting with one another. That may happen with agents in a serious way, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to be really careful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, people, there is a class for you, free, right?
Yes, I mean, it's free, yes.
The free right now on
free
LinkedIn?
for a month. It's free on LinkedIn.
Okay,
yes.
So today, what's today's date? March?
What is March
5th.
Yeah.
So 4 months. So
yes,
free.
For a month,
so
yes.
we'll add also the link. But thank you so much for stopping by and talking to us. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.